module to be covered. What I want to do is just go over the objectives that we have in each one, and we've just pulled some of the slides out to discuss some of them. What our goal and intent is that the test questions and what we're testing to is what we're telling people the objectives are. So there still may be some test questions that you run across that aren't outlined in the objectives, but by the time we're completely done with this, it should be where all the test questions are coming from what we tell people the objective of the module is. So here we have the objectives for the industry, the types of businesses, functions, and types of systems. And as we go through, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on some of these slides because I'm assuming that most of us have taught this so many times we could probably cite some of these things in our sleep. So we just pulled out some slides. You'll also notice that there's a lot better graphics and updated pictures as we go through this material. We also, you'll notice on this slide the types of systems as the CCV. That's a change. We're going to closed circuit video instead of just saying closed circuit TV or anything. And we're also added in here the lifestyle enhancement systems and also making sure we had the PERS covered in here. That's pretty much the changes for the first part, the industry. Do we have any questions on that, the first chapter on the industry? Okay. The next one is standards.
George, you do have a question.
You'll notice.
George, we do have a question.
Okay, good.
Go ahead, Don.
Good morning, everyone. Hey, George, on the PERS, will we be discussing mobile PERS as well?
We'll have to look and see if we've added that, Don, back in the related systems. Okay.
Okay.
Where that would, if we discuss it, that's where we are discussing it. If we don't, that's where it should be moved to.
Okay. Thank you, George.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay. On the standards, we're talking about again coordinating team activity, indicate requirements, the difference between standards and codes, our all-time favorite AHJ, and talk about how compliance to the standards reduces the liability and results in fewer false alarms. So here we get into why we have codes and standards. Also reiterating that we do not cover all codes and standards, and that the codes and standards that we are talking about are state, and pointing out to individuals that they may be aware of codes and standards that are enforced differently in their area, but this level 1 is based on how they were written for national, not for any one state or local jurisdiction. Here it is again describing what a code is, that it's mandatory, and that it's just the minimum. One of the things I like to tell people in this section is that when you talk to an electrician, they are very proud of the fact that they did a job to code. And when you break it down, all they're doing is saying that they're proud that they did the minimum. What a standard is, and AHJ, I know one of the, this is one of the areas where people have a hard time understanding who all can be an AHJ and where their ability to be AHJ starts and stops. So it's a one that it is important, and we just need to make sure that we're encompassing the whole AHJ and not just that it's an electrical inspector, a building inspector, a fire marshal. It's various individuals. Then what is a standard? We go through this and who all an AHJ can be here. So this is one where you just need to probably spend more than the minute on this to ensure they have a good understanding of this. One of the other nice things about this the new way we're doing things is that NTS will be able to track by, not just by student, by questions, which test questions are being missed the most, but we'll also be able to track by instructor which questions may or may not, so that we can help everyone, help ourselves become better instructors and help the students to make sure that we're covering things in a way that makes it easy for them to get the comprehension. And that was one of the things that as we went down this path, we were concerned with: what does someone coming into this industry need to know as a basic level 1 installer? And so you'll see a lot of things that were moved over into Appendix A. That's where all the gray material went, by the way. We either brought it, ungraded and brought it in because we thought it was important, or we moved it to Appendix A right now. And so there's a lot of good material there, but you're not going to put a new person out working on those types of systems. So we said that a lot of that stuff will end up either in level 2 or, as you saw in the notes, commercial fire. We're moving that, making sure that we're covering that in FAME and the PFAD courses, as opposed to it being in level 1. So any questions on standards? One other thing we added in standards is the, instead of saying everything needed to be UL listed, we say it has to be listed to a UL standard, but it doesn't have to be UL doing the listing itself. So we've added the other testing labs, and it's no longer even called a NERTL, a National Testing Lab, but they're just called recognized testing labs. So, okay. If there's no questions, we'll go on to alarm management. Okay. Under alarm management, we tried to organize it so it flows a little bit better. Talk about the history of the dispatch and the factors that represented the problem. Describe how a plan to reduce the dispatches and how to measure, and then also talk about the aspects of ECV and CPO1. These two are important because there are a lot of jurisdictions that have passed ordinances, or even states that now require from the state level ECV, but there are a lot of city ordinances that were passed saying that only CPO1 equipment shall be installed in their jurisdiction. So that's why this is one of the objectives to alarm management. And here's the history. We talk about the managing the alarms and how this evolution of the alarm ordinances came about. Hold on one second. I've got to figure out how to silence my phone. There, I just did it. Okay. So we talk about where we started and where we came from to where we are today. And I think this is a lot of individuals had problems understanding what the dispatch factor, how to figure it out. So this is a new slide you'll see in alarm management. I think it does a very good way of showing the individuals that have a problem with math. And these numbers stayed the same. We didn't change them. Then we got into alarm verification and various alarm verification methods. And then we went into ECV. And you'll also notice that we've referencing even in here 731, the section of 731 where it applies here. Then we get into the CPO1 control panel, talking about the various changes that were made, and we still also talk about the user being the major problem in here. So that's CPO1 has not changed. Here's where we talk about what their solution is as a company, what they can do. Questions on alarm management section. And I know this picture you're seeing is not typical because people aren't that smiling that great when they're working on a panel. Okay, there's no questions on alarm management. We'll move into the electricity portion. The objectives are pretty much still the same on the objective. Oops. Oh, okay. Never mind. We've also, one of the major things you'll notice is that the material that was in the troubleshooting module that dealt with electricity was moved into electricity and out of troubleshooting. So we're trying to deal with electricity all at once without, if I know that a lot of times to make it easier for the students, I would switch from electricity and then go right into the troubleshooting and put them back to back. So we've pulled out what we thought needed to be in electricity out of troubleshooting, so we shouldn't have to do that in the future. The resistor ratings stay the same. The current measurement stays the same. Voltage stays the same. We've improved the image of the resistor example, I think, and I want to thank Michelle for a lot of the improvements that we have in the graphics and pictures that we have. So resistance, showing some resistors, adding in the actual dimensions and power dissipation table. We still talk about conductors and the fact that silver's better than copper, but copper's the most common. So, and then insulator and the various types of insulating material we talk a little bit more about than what we had in the past. We still have the simple series circuit. The parallel stays the same. The characteristics, this stayed the same. And then getting into Ohm's law. And it seems, and the explanation of Ohm's law seems to be an area where some students grasp it, others don't, and so as instructors it's up to us to try and figure out different ways of explaining Ohm's law to the individuals.
George, you have a
Any
question?
questions on the electric? Yes. Go.
Andy, go ahead.
Hi. We had gotten complaints from students that in their student manual, when they showed the resistor charts, because the manual is printed in black and white, the chart in the manual is pretty much useless. Is it possible to maybe insert just one page in that manual that's printed in color?
Which chart are you referring to?
When they discuss the resistor color codes.
Oh, okay. So
Yes.
you're looking at, hold on.
Yeah, it may not be on your slide deck, but I know which one you're talking about. But Andy, because yes,
There it is.
yeah, we have that as a handout. Yes, we'll have it as a separate handout, so it can't be inserted into the book as a color page. It's complicated with the printers, but we are going to be including it like in the student kit, we call it, as a handout.
Oh, perfect. Okay.
Okay, and then it's one of those that once you have a copy and you scan it and save it, then, and that's what I do with all the forms, just in case I get to a class and I don't have that packet, I can just go ahead and print. So that's going to be separate along with the answer sheets and things, Michelle?
Yes, correct.
Okay.
We will also
right.
put it on the LMS site, so as a resource for people to download.
Okay. Any other questions?
Yes, we have one more.
Okay.
Oh, maybe not. It went down his hand, so it's back up again. So 1 second. We have a
Yes.
couple, it looks like. So,
All right.
Tommy, I cannot. I know you have your hand up, but because you haven't entered your audio pin, I can't unmute you. So I just sent you your PIN, if you could enter that. I'm going to take Mike McGinnis's question right now until we get your PIN in there, Tommy. Go ahead, Mike.
Good morning. I was just trying to let you know that I had the same question Andy did. That was all. That was. I'm glad we covered that because I get that complaint often. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Mike. Good to hear your voice. Is Tom been able to, have you been able to unmute Tom?
I have, yes. I'm sorry, actually, it's Wayne Jones. I still can't do Tommy. So go ahead, Wayne.
Okay.
Yeah, quick question for you. Are we going to have a chance to review the manual, the new manual, and offer suggestions for changes before you guys turn that loose?
No, actually, it's final now. So it has been vetted by several people on the SME committee. So if you'll get, today, I'm actually working on it right now as George is presenting, to get you the link to the PDF. And if you have any additional requests you'd like to make, you can make those, but it won't be until the next version of the release. So, and then a note about that is that we're not going to wait another, 4 or 5 years to update this. The goal is that our plan is to make it an annual process to make updates. So that was one of the things we did with this version of this course, is we made it so that the slide decks and the manual can be easily edited by any staff here at NTS. So that's something that we want to make it so as we find things, we can change it pretty quickly, obviously without putting a burden on our chapters who sometimes stock these books. But that is something we want to, just so you guys know, it's going to be a lot easier to make changes going forward.
Yeah, and just so you know, one of the things that I have to thank Michelle for is a lot of the old images were actually embedded in. And so we actually could not go in and make changes to a lot of this stuff because of the way it was originally developed. And so Michelle's done a good job of making sure that a lot of these images that you now see are more easily editable in the future, which can help us make changes quicker and faster. Okay. Still
no, Tommy posted his question because looks like actually, I'm sorry, it's Tommy Morris posted a question.
Okay.
He said it appears there's an error where on the resistor slide where the 20%, this 2% should be 20%.
2%. Plus or minus.
It's the fourth band, I think.
Yes.
I'll make a note of that.
It was correct.
He wins today's prize.
Yeah. Yep. Very good. Okay. All righty. If that's all the questions on electricity, we'll move into the next module. Power supplies. Talking about choosing the power supply difference, transformer, step up, step down. All of these things have been the objectives for quite a while. One of the things you can point out when you're doing this is a lot more jurisdictions across the nation are requiring, as we do this last one, the alarm load and normal load of doing the calculations and providing them the calculations on the permitting and everything. It's also now a requirement in 72. So I think you'll see greater interest in how to actually do these calculations for the normal load and alarm load. It's how to select the right power supply. We've not changed that. And then what a transformer is not changed. The step up, step down, it's not changed, except for you'll see that we've added the arrow that says more coils. Selection, how to select using the correct VA, never sharing transformers, and secondary power supply we talk about, and you'll also see down at the bottom another reference to 731 where it talks about replacing the battery within 5 years of the date of manufacture. It's no longer when we installed it. So it's from the date of manufacture that we're dealing with the age of a battery. VA rating, and system power types. Again, this is the minimum. This has been this way for a number of years now. And then here's the calculation form. You'll notice that we've changed the total amp hours from a 20% suggested to a 20% required. The codes now are requiring that we ensure that when we do our initial calculation that we've included an additional 20%. So whereas that used to say and be suggested, it is now a requirement. Questions on power supplies? Okay. All right. On the control panels, we're still talking the general methods to connect. Describe various kinds of user interfaces. We've gotten away from using the term keypad, and we're trying to talk about user interfaces to our systems now. And here we say hardwire. We used to say wireless at this point. We're using the term low-powered radio because that's what it's referred to in 72. It's when you go to look at in the code, it talks about low-powered radio, and so we tried to use the term that people will see in the codes. And then here we also say wireless. Okay. Now you'll also see here we have the LED, the LCD. We've also added a touch screen to this, and other types of user interfaces. So we're trying to bring out what all the industry is currently using as interfaces. We talk about zoning, the importance of zoning, the advantages of zoning. And the advantages, one of the things that I point out today when it talks about reduces service time, one of the, a number of years ago, product was more expensive than labor. Today, labor is more expensive than product. So anything that a company can do to reduce the amount of labor they spend on service is in their best interest. So, and the codes also, 730, 731 talk about having one device per zone. There's been a move even with 72 to mandate addressable systems. That got pushed back, but you're seeing more and more regulatory bodies pushing for the fact that we only have one device per zone, whether in one way or another. So again, we talk about the number of devices on a zone. Questions on control panels? On perimeter sensors, if you're following along, you'll notice that we've added additional headings. We also removed the outdoor microwave sensor. We thought that didn't belong in level 1. So we talked about basic principles, components to be considered when determining the total load. Again, we're still having to go down the path of describing what's normally open, normally closed, and individuals still confuse when we're talking about the switch or contact versus we're talking about the panel itself. We're talking about the zone. These goals, these still are the same. You'll notice we added perimeter being the first line and interior being the second. This stays the same, that we haven't changed that. We talk about the standard that created the normally open, normally closed was the UL 634 standard. The plunger switch, 3 methods of detecting glass breakage. Michelle, I think we have this listed as 3, but we're only listing 2 on this slide. Okay. Then we talk about the types of acoustic glass break detectors. The standard glass break, the dual and multi-frequency glass breaks, what they look for. More about the multi-frequency. And a lot of what you're seeing here, we actually pulled this out of the gray material and pulled this in because we thought it was important because of all the different glass breaks that are out there, that people understand more fully how these things, different ones, worked. Any questions on the perimeter? Okay. On the interior, we just reorganized most of the interior section. Okay. So here are the objectives on it. They're pretty much stayed the same. You'll notice the last objective, though, I believe is a new objective where we say describe how to conduct a walk test. And that gives a lead into when we get to one of the slides that we'll go over here. So here we go, talking about the interior sensors. More about the interior sensors that we're looking for motion to catch people. We look for changes in the environment. That's pretty much staying the same. That's for our passive. The actives, again, stay the same. We get into a little bit more as to infrared energy in here. We've added a little bit more into the slides than what was there. Here is a new slide you'll see that talks about how it's activated, what activates it, okay? Where it even talks about not just the pounds of the people, but the walking speeds over a distance of 6.5 and a rate of rise of temperature. You'll see a lot more specific information that wasn't in here before. A little bit more information, and okay. And we tried to do it in a chart form so that it would be easier for the students to sit there and locate this information. The characteristics of it, the parts to a PIR. If you remember, there was always a question, there was always a test question on this, but there was never a slide showing this to the students or to give the instructor the opportunity to bring these parts out. So we've put that into a slide and I believe this was also in the gray area. A little bit more talking about the Fresnel. The fields of view, the slides stayed the same. And then here's the proper detection. And if you were like me, this sat there and it was like, okay, how did we work this in or have a discussion about it and correlate to it? And so this now gets tied back into the last objective that you'll see for interior sensors. And then photoelectric beams, the single beam, the dual beam, multi-beam. Questions on changes we did to interior sensors? Okay. Let's go to alarm systems. One of the changes you'll see here is we removed the statistical information. But the objectives pretty much stay the same here, except, yeah, we're talking about the types of system, the most common. Again, for a fire alarm objective, intrusion. Again, we talk about the low voltage narrowband RF. The perimeter sensors, interior sensors, fire alarm sensors, how the signals reach the monitoring center. This is all staying the same. One change we've added here is the 5 basic types of signals. You'll see that we've added carbon monoxide in here. Carbon monoxide is starting to be required in some areas of the country. And we used to send it as a fire signal, and it can't get sent as a fire signal. So we went ahead and made sure we updated this to show that that is a separate type of signal, separate from a fire signal. And then additional types of signals, types of fire alarm systems. Questions on alarm systems? Okay. Under the fire alarm systems, we removed most of the commercial fire, and we've tried to make sure that we've updated the codes to the 72-2013. We still talk about the 4 stages, the 2 types of smoke, the code reference, sidewall mounting, heats, and then the mounting height. This is the same slide with the stages of fire, where we have the major, moderate, and little hazard. We have the photoelectric ionization. One of the things you may want to point out on the ionization is there is a move by some in the fire industry to outlaw all ionization detectors and alarms up in the Northeast and out in the California area. They are really pushing to get rid of these ionization detectors strictly because of the false alarms that have been that we've been dealing with over the years. It did not make it into the proposed 2016 edition of 72, but I'm sure it's going to come back and get pushed and could very well be in the 2019. So that's why you'll see a lot of the new types of smoke detectors where they're doing the combination sensing devices. These are locations. This is also not just in 72, it's also in the building code. A lot of the countries now under the IRC, and this is also located in the IRC, the IBC, and 101. So it doesn't matter which building code you're under, everyone in the nation has these requirements where there are detectors outside of each sleeping area, in immediate vicinity, on each floor, etc. We talk about where they shall not be located. One of the interesting things here is that fourth one is, since they're now required, and this applies to smoke alarm and detectors, is that we're required to stay 36 inches away from the tip of the ceiling blade in the bedroom, which is a very interesting aspect. Now, the second bullet talks about shall not be located within 21 feet of I'm in the middle of the conference. Okay. It talks about shall not be located within 21 foot of the cooking area. I would recommend that you all look at this citation here of 29834. There are some changes to how you can be within that 21 feet. And there's also a change that's going to come about for 2016. So you may want to familiarize yourself with that section. Well, I know that we'll probably try and get it incorporated into here the next time we go in and we make changes to it, but there is one of the new changes is effective January 1st, 2016. Smoke alarms and smoke detectors used in household fire alarm systems installed between 6 feet and 20 feet shall be listed for resistance to common nuisance sources from cooking. So there's just been a change in that area that you may want to, as instructors, become familiar with on that. Again, on the smoke, if you haven't kept up with in 2013. Yes.
Don, I'm going to go ahead and you can ask your question.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
We can.
Hey, hi. Hey, George. Don McInnes. How are you doing?
Hey, doing fine, Doc.
Good. The comment I've got is one of the things that a lot of the instructors over the years and why we do these train-to-trainers is so that they get the understanding of what the committee and what the SMEs had when they created these slides. So one of the things that was done over the years was putting little side notes so that when you're preparing for it, you can look at it further so that you may have a talking point. Is that going to be done here? I mean, if you guys put some little notes like you're mentioning, well, you might want to mention this, you might want to mention that. Are those in the side notes? You know, when we used to do the CDs, there was that little side thing you used to be able to have. You know where I'm coming from?
Yes, I do. Michelle, can you answer that on how the new deck is?
Yeah, so on some of the slides, yes, there are notes. Once you get the slide deck, if there isn't notes on a particular slide that you are, have a question about or would like some elaboration on, just let me know and I'll pass it along to the SME group to see that we get that included. But there are on many of them.
Right, and the reason I mention that is over the years of doing either training the trainer or, you know, certifying an instructor, I always told them, I said, that's a good place to start because a lot of times you're like a deer in the headlight. And, you know, you look at the slide and you think that and then you look at the book, and then sometimes people still have a hard time grasping the intent, and then it's really just a way for you, another tool you can use to provide a quality presentation. So I just want to make sure that's still there. Thank you.
Thank you, Don. Any other questions or comments before
George,
we continue?
there is a
Yes.
question on the, there's also a question screen that we have access to. There is a question regarding the 5 types of fire alarm systems, and
Yes.
it's referring to NFPA 7227.6
Okay.
and systems as being supervising. That seems confusing. This is coming from Kyle, and Kyle, if you want, I'll unmute you and maybe you can elaborate that question a little bit. And go ahead, Kyle. Kyle, we can hear you. Are you there?
Is it Kyle Underzuber?
Mm-hmm.
Is this the slide he's talking about?
I assume I'm going to record it, and I don't know if he wants to make it, I don't know. I'll record the question and we can discuss it after.
Okay. Yeah, and we may, I think it's probably a good question that we may want to add for the instructors a small, quick description of what each of these are. And again, though, we're just mentioning them here. We've moved most of the fire over to the theme and the other fire courses. So we'll have to decide which way we want to deal with this, whether we even still need this slide in the Level 1 presentation.
And now we have another question from John Frederick. John, I'm going to unmute you. Go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I was just looking to see if we had voice communication, and we hadn't done it before.
So did that answer your question, John? We do have any other questions?
I believe Kyle is ready to elaborate.
Good.
Okay, am I unmuted and you can hear me now?
We can hear you, Cal.
Okay, thank you very much. 27.6, I would think you would be referring to as public systems based upon the terminology in the chapter.
Let's see, 27.6. We have to look at this. Yeah.
Yeah, Chapter 27 is Public Emergency Alarm Reporting Systems, and I'm not aware that the term supervised is used in Section 27.6 at all.
Well, we have to look at this whole slide, Michelle, because in the 13th edition, 27.6 is alarm boxes. it is not. Let's see if it's supposed to be 26.6. I have a feeling that it is supposed to be 26.6, not 27.6.
That would make more sense.
Yes, that's why I should read 72, 26.6. That is supervising station system.
Thank you.
Got it. I'll fix it.
Okay?
That's
Any
fine. You can mute me.
Okay. Do we need to take a 5-minute break, or can we continue on?
They can't answer your question, so if you need a 5-minute break, then we should take one. So.
All right. I don't. Okay. One of the changes in 2013 on sidewall mounting that was very controversial was the elimination of the requirement that the smoke stay out of this 4 inches in the corner. That requirement was removed in 2013. That requirement still applies to heats. So if someone's using a combination smoke heat detector, you still need to stay away from that 4 inches. But if it's just strictly a smoke, you no longer have to stay away from there. The requirement that some portion at or above 12 inches still remains there. And again, this has been controversial, and it still is. So there's been a lot of discussion as to why this was done, but they did studies and everything and got it pushed through as a change. The heats, we talk about rate of rise, fixed temperature, so are the 2 types. One of the things that we need to be talking about here is realizing that a lot of the material in the level 1 was developed when everything was mechanical and not electronic. So in today's combination smoke and heat detector, those heats are not the mechanical type. They're being done electronically. So it changes a little bit about how the device works. So, and then we have the normal mounting height for the fire alarm box, which is a pull station. You'll also now find in 72 that the term pull station was actually added in a parenthesis in 72. They finally acknowledged that in the field we don't call these things fire alarm boxes, we call them pull stations. Any further questions on on fire systems? Okay. On the notification devices, we're talking about types of visual, ADA, types of audibles, dB levels. Again, the types of enunciators that we have, strobes, xenon. One of the things I point out here, even though this started as an ADA requirement, the building codes have actually taken what ADA was requiring and put it into the building codes. So, and actually went further than ADA did. ADA only required it in these areas that were accessible to the public. The building code's now requiring it in all restrooms, all meeting rooms, things like this that are general or common use, not just whether they're available or open to the public or not. So it's one of the things to point out here when you're talking ADA. Also, where the placement of it must be at least 80 inches above the floor or 6 below, whichever's lower. The reason they want it minimum 6 below is that the strobe is designed not to get your attention when you're looking straight at it, but it's designed to get a person's attention when they're not looking straight at it. It's a peripheral, and it creates that that light in your peripheral that makes you look. And you'll notice that a number of these things come out of the ADA handbook, out of the appendixes, where they originally put this, but it also has been moved over into even 72. So it's been made part of the code now. Again, more requirements for the strobe. Types of audibles. We have the self-contained, making sure you have enough power to power them. We all know that some of these older devices that were sitting out there pulled over an amp of power. So it's making sure that if you go to take over that system, that the panel you're installing can support what's sitting there audible-wise. And most of the new wireless systems will not support any of these old audibles that we have sitting out there. Again, we talk about making sure that we connect them together correctly for impedance. Choosing the audible, this has all stayed the same. Again, talking about the decibel, talking about the common decibel levels. Questions on notification devices?
Yes, we have a question. Wayne,
Okay.
go ahead.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, Wayne.
Yeah, I had a real quick question. It's more of a something to avoid confusion, but basically, as I understand, we're doing a level 1 directed towards people who aren't that experienced in the industry, and you talked about notification devices in general, and then all of a sudden you hit them with a slide that has notification, and you're talking about impedance, which implies balancing the system, the whole thing. Should there be something else with that to help them understand? They don't even, most of them don't even know what the word impedance means.
It's a good thought. You want to take a note of that, Michelle, and we can send that back to the committee to see how they want to.
Yeah, I'm not saying it shouldn't be in there, but probably some better explanation around it.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Also, if I can, I'm jumping back a couple of modules, but you mentioned trying to make the slides match up to the test. Well, one of the test questions had to do with what is conductance, and I don't ever remember seeing a slide that had the word conductance on it. That was in the electrical section.
That is a good point. I'll have to go back through and look at, again, what you're seeing here is not the whole complete. This is just
right.
slides that were picked out.
That's why I asked the question, are we going to have a chance to go through the book? So, anyway.
Yes, you will. Like Michelle
All right.
said, you'll be getting that link when we're, done here.
All right, thanks a lot.
Okay? All right, thank you, Lane. Communications, we moved the legacy methods. We talk about more modern methods. We removed much of the IP information because we have an individual who has offered to design a new networking course that is specific to just networking as we use it in today. The other thing that you will notice is that we got rid of the term slave out of this module. We all felt that there was a better term that we could use instead of using the term slave. So you will not see that in the new presentation. Okay. We also talk about VoIP and talk more about the issues regarding VoIP and what the potential problems for us. One of the other things to keep in mind when you're discussing this module is that in 72, from 2011 to 2013, in 2013, the preferred method of communication is no longer 2 landlines. In fact, you need to get AHJ approval if you're going to use 2 landlines. So between 2011 and 2013, the landline went from being the most preferred to the least preferred method of communication we have. We have the options of wired, wireless, and networking. Then communication paths. We updated this slide to show a better picture of what we were actually talking about. Then we have the digital communicators. We still talk about them because there's still a lot of systems sitting out there that someone just coming in from the industry is going to run across them and have to deal with them on existing systems, which is why we're still covering it, even though we know that the communication industry across the nation is getting rid of the landlines, and so potential problems are still there. We still talk about the line seizure. I think we did clean this up a little bit, made it a little bit more clear so that it shows better when you're actually putting it up on the screen. And then we talk about the 2 categories of VoIP, the non-facilities and facilities-based. We talk about the configuration of how these work, and that if you lose power anywhere in one of these items, then you lose the ability to get the dial tone. Issues, we have installations, whether it's customer performed, whether they disconnect, and we say customer performed, or another way of saying that is DIY, do-it-yourself installs. Okay. Line seizure is still critical when we still are using the landline. We talk about the power and how if we don't have backup power to every portion of a system that gets that homeowner that dial tone, you're going to lose service when power to the house goes down. Questions on communications? Okay. Wiring methods. We talk about types of wiring, splices, recommended wiring size, 10 commandments. These pretty much have stayed the same. One of the major changes was we moved grounding from the gray material up to the need to know. So then talking about the types of wiring. Wiring sizes, these are the recommended sizing. That stayed the same. 10 Commandments stayed the same. Although some of these commandments are actually law now. I mean, they're in the code. Questions on the wiring methods? Oh, on the communication, one other thing that I'll go back and mention is when we talk about the RJ jack and let's see. We didn't move it in here, but when we talk about the RJ jack, that it should be within, you know, the 24 inches of the panel. That jack needs to be accessible to the homeowner, and that's FCC ruling that it needs to be accessible. And you'll see a lot of companies installing the RJ jack behind the small panel in the wall. Well, that violates this last 10 commandment that says we need the needs to be accessible, you know, the 6-inch minimum. It's a violation of the NEC. And I point that out to people that a lot of the way some of these systems were installed is a violation of the NEC and the FCC. So this is one of the things I bring out. Under the tools and equipment section, we moved the tools that were in troubleshooting, we pulled them into this module. Okay. We also added some other relevant tools. So we still have the small screwdrivers, the hand tools, more hand tools. Again, I think we did a much better job of having pictures that were relevant to what it is we use today. Drills, various handheld monitor, and the multi-function CCTV tester there, and also the camera analyzer that are all specific for video. Questions on tools and equipment? That's fairly straightforward. Okay. Troubleshooting, it's describe the basic theories and explain how to use a voltmeter. So these now are the two objectives that we're looking to make sure that we cover in troubleshooting. Again, we moved quite a bit out of troubleshooting into the appropriate modules, electricity and tools. So we have the troubleshooting steps, stay the same. Meter, using it. We enlarge the images when you're using the meter. Okay. So we do a, again, we just enlarged the graphics so it's easier to see. Measuring current, more current. All these are the same as what, none of these slides changed as far as their the material presented. Okay. Oh, Michelle, this slide needs changed. That arrow needs to go straight up on this one.
Okay.
Questions on the troubleshooting module? Okay. On CCV, again, we call it closed circuit video. We've removed a lot of the legacy, and we've also reorganized the flow of it. Okay. So again, keeping in mind the objectives, what you're trying to do. What I talk about here is that a lot of people go the other direction. They have a camera they want to sell instead of figuring out what it is that the customer needs and then designing the system around the customer needs. A lot of people in the industry, they say, oh, here's the camera that I sell, so here's what it can do. And the fundamentals, we talk about transmission media. It no longer has to be coax or a lot of different transmission medias in there. Same way with the, when we say the monitor, today it can be so many different things than just the standard monitor we're used to. And we're still with the basic coax distances. The size and distance, this still stayed the same. I don't, so we just removed a lot of the old stuff. So any questions on CCV?
George, yes, we do have a question.
On access control, yes, yes.
Joe, I am going to unmute you. Joseph Hayes, do you have a question? He had asked earlier on about CCV, and he asked if it should be changed to video surveillance rather than CCV, since we also deal with IP video, which is not closed circuit.
It's probably a good question. It needs to be fed back to the committee, see how they want to deal with, because more and more of what we're doing in new technology, what most companies are doing residentially, is what Joel's referring to. I mean, what Joe's referring to, rather.
Okay, and I believe, Tommy Morse, that was your question as well? I've unmuted you, Tommy. If is that your question? I'm assuming it is. It's something he doesn't have a mic. So if not, just you can post another. Okay, yes, he said yes. Great. I'll mute you again. And then it appears Jean Lavelle has a question as well. So I'm going to unmute you, Jean. Go ahead.
Well, thank you. I actually was answered. We're good. I tried to bring my hand back down, so technically I do not have a question then.
Thank you.
Okay. Good to hear your voice, Jean. Okay. Well, and this slide here will eventually going to have to change shortly either, because I don't know anyone that still goes out and buys a 9-inch monitor. So, okay. On access control, we've added some things in here, a general consideration, customer assessments, types of blocks. So we've beefed this one up a little bit more. The objectives are staying the same on it, but I think we do a better job of offering, so it may take more than the normal 15-20 minutes to go through this module. It may take you a few more minutes to actually go through this. We talk about the commonly used devices. We still talk about the code requirements on exit devices. Turnstiles. Additional applications to consider is, again, the different types of gates. One of the things that we talk about is, that I talk about in this section is, when we're talking the exit devices, we're talking egress, but there are times when ingress becomes a code requirement also. So those are two terms that they may hear as you're discussing access control, is ingress and egress, because there are times when the fire officials want to make sure that they can come in certain personnel doors to fight the fire at that location. Questions on access control. I know one of the, I don't know if we still have the question on the exam. It talks about which one of these is the best if you're concerned about pedestrian traffic. That was something I always brought out because the slides and material didn't do a very good job of discussing that aspect of it. So, and I don't know if that's still a exam question or not, but it was one of the things that I made sure that I brought out in this.
It has been removed, George.
Oh, okay. It has been removed. Good. Okay. Any questions on access control? Okay. Related systems. Don, this is where if we expand on the PERS, that it should be in here. We talked about a guard tour. We now talk about lifestyle convenience system, you know, the new term that we have in the industry. We also talk about Z-Wave and Zigbee mesh networks here under related systems. So here's the PERS device, the personal assistance device that we had. Don, I don't think in this group of slides that we grabbed will answer your question. You'll probably, when you download the all the new material, you'll have to go in and look in this section to see if your question's answered from earlier. Okay. Talk about guard tours and how they can be handheld and RFID sensors now. We talk about lifestyle convenience features of everything that we can do. And here's where we talk a little bit more about Z-Wave and what it is and how it's coming into the residential marketplace. And then also a little bit more about Zigbee as to what Zigbee is and where the standard is that you can get more information on Zigbee. We talk about the mesh networks, the considerations when you're installing it. Any questions on related systems? Okay. We also got rid of the footrail slide under related systems, so you'll see quite a few changes in this section. Okay. Client relations. We still talk about the 3 stages where you have the opportunities, dealing with difficult. We talk about dealing with difficult customers, documentation, and we still talk about contractual terms. Okay? So we still have these three areas where pre-install, install, and post-install, that each company has the opportunity to either help, improve, or hinder the relationship we have with the customer. And we talk about the art of coping with difficult customers. I think this has been a very good addition over the last couple of years to bringing this out in class and talking about how to do this and how to actually deal with the difficult customers. One of the things that I point out when we talk about here about don't take it personally, I bring out that there's a difference between a customer being upset and swearing at a situation and swearing and being upset at you when you walk in. And I always make sure they understand that they're walking into the customer's castle. And they may not agree in their personal life with swearing or things like this, but they have to understand that they're at the customer's house, and they need to know the difference between an individual who's upset at a situation and whether they're actually being offensive toward the individual. And there's nothing that we're talking about in here that we are trying to tell people that they have to stay in a situation where they are being attacked personally. But they have to understand the difference between it, the customer being upset at the situation versus not taking it personally. Okay. Documentation in general. This is an area where we'll probably have to be changing this as we go down the path because of a lot of the changes in 72 and 731. That's getting more specific as to what documentation is required. Also realize that there are some state laws that require that certain documentation be given to the customers in some of the licensing laws that are out there and regulations. They've actually written into the state law the various things that in that state you're supposed to be giving to individuals. So I don't get into the specifics of it, but I just let individuals know that they need to know in their state what they may need to do. And then here's the general of where we want the documentation, where it should be, when it should be. We talk here about installation completion and whenever changes are made. And most of this came initially out of 72, and realize that when you get back in 72, that's another major change in 13 was all the documentation requirements. So you may want to take a look at that chapter and become familiar with that chapter in 72 because there were a lot of changes to it. And that's chapter 7 where they talk about all the documentation. And then making sure that one of the things I bring out here is when we're talking about the contract, I tell the individuals, if you don't know what's in the contract, if you're unsure of it, don't make something up because call someone, because there are state laws that sit there and say that what you tell the customer has to be true. You don't have to tell the customer everything you know, but what you tell them has to be true. And so there are a couple of state licensing laws that deal with this, that it's a state law in essence that you cannot give the customer wrong information. So I just make sure and tell the individuals in the class, if you're unsure, hey, call someone else, don't make something up. And then we talk about the terms to know the difference between these. So again, so that we're using the correct term with the customer. Questions on client relations? Okay. On job safety, we've deleted the driving test. We've deleted the stuff about scaffolding. We've added some things about potential hazards. We rearranged the exhaustion and heat stroke and did a couple of other changes in here. So you'll see quite a few changes in this module. But what we reflect here, and it's the employer's responsibility to provide with the safety information and things, but it's also the employee's responsibility to act in a safe manner, our things. So,
George?
Yes.
Roy has a question. Roy, I'm going to unmute you.
Yes.
Go ahead, Roy. Oh, he can't come off mute for some reason.
Can he?
I have his question noted in the. His question is, it's here on the question list. He said, also, technicians should not interpret the language in the contract. That can be construed as legal advice.
Correct. That's another good point to bring out. Is that's a very good point, Roy. Thank you. Okay.
Oh, and we have another question from Jean Lavelle.
Yes, Jean.
I'm going to unmute him. Go ahead, Jean.
Man, we must be on a delay there, Michelle, huh? This time I raise my hand. Can you hear me?
We can hear you. Did you raise it a while ago?
Yeah, it's been up for a while, but that's okay. We're good. I'm going to document it and email it. It was back in Access. I had an Access point or a couple of questions in Access.
Sure. Go ahead, Gene.
Well, it was quickly, we throw a few quick verbs or verbiage about smart cards in the gray area. Any thought to moving that into the white area and adding a slide or two on smart cards, memory sizes, common uses, things like that. And then the other thing was on, was it related systems? Any thoughts to removing the line carrier stuff? Nobody uses line carrier anymore that I'm aware of. I don't know what the folks thought, but those were my two questions, my 2 points. Thank you, Michelle.
I know we had discussion about removing the line carrier, Gene. I'd have to go back through and look at the, and I'm going to be teaching this next week in Memphis. But I know we had discussions about removing it. I just haven't gone through to see the final, to see if it actually was removed. Okay.
Thanks.
All right. Here we have on job safety the employer's responsibility to provide the information and to provide the employees with a reasonable and practical level, provide safety training. I know that individuals up in the Northeast are used to having to do OSHA training. Some of you may not be aware of the OSHA 10, but we're seeing that requirement move more and more across the country to where even in the non-commercial environment, they're wanting individuals trained to that OSHA 10 standard. So that's an area you may want to look at so you're familiar with the OSHA 10. But I also bring out that both sides have responsibilities here. The employer has some and the employee has some. Also be aware that if you discuss MSDS sheets, that term MSDS was changed by OSHA. It's no longer MSDS. I forget what the new term is. I just know that it's no longer MSDS. Causes of accidents is complacency. These have stayed the same. General precautions have stayed the same. Treating electric shock. We added a couple things too. Heat exhaustion, what to do, heat stroke, what to do with heat stroke. And then still have a little bit on the first aid of knowing your limitations. Okay. Questions on the job safety? Questions on the material as a whole? And this was just a brief overview of where we've taken the level 1 and why when you go through it, it'll look a little different. And hopefully it flows better, and the student won't have all that gray material in the book that they have to thumb through as you're going from slide to slide. So hopefully it should be a little bit more easier for the student to follow along.
We do have some hands raised, so I'm going to start with Andy Neske. Go ahead, Andy.
Hi, guys. Hey, has anybody looked at or got a sense of how this might change the timing of the class, you know, breaks, things like that?
We haven't looked at how it changes your break times and things. We've not changed the time that was originally associated with each module.
So that basically it's still going to be the amount of time that we're used to putting in for this stuff. It's not longer, shorter.
Correct.
Andy, it's been beta tested a couple times in the fall, and at that point in time, there was no noted changes. However, because there are, there was a lot of material that was pulled out and then additional material pulled in, there could be some changes, and that's the thing that we're going to need your input, everybody's input, as the more you teach this to see if there should be further tweaks. We just have to be real careful with that kind of thing with state licensing and where this is approved. So our intent was not to change the length of the class, but we can make accommodations if the more people that see it as needing to be shorter, potentially shorter. So definitely let us know if you notice anything as you're teaching.
Thank you. That was it.
Okay. The next person for their hand raised is Don McGinnis. So Don, and I'm going to unmute you now. Go ahead.
Hi. Thanks a lot again. George, again, thanks for the great job as usual. My comment is I think once we see the manual in relationship to the changes with the slides, I think it'll be a lot more easier to make, to see how this thing's going to flow. Until you see yourself on what the students are seeing, because they see the book, then they hear the presentation and they see the slides. And it sounds like you guys put a little bit of effort into making sure that when a student's looking at the book and looking at the slide, that things match up. So I appreciate that effort, because that's always been one of the things where guys are looking at, like, again, deer in the headlight, when something didn't match and you either got ahead of them or behind them. So.
Yes, thanks. Thanks, John. And one note, once you guys get this book and the material, I'm going to try and figure out a way that we can have some type of discussion board so that as you see things or have questions, there can be an open dialogue with everybody and the SMEs. So that way there can be, you know, just further engagement on the content, and that way we can, the SMEs can help communicate, you know, what we can, you know, just fix immediately or, you know, enhance immediately, or what's going to come later down the pipeline. So I'll be back in touch with regarding that, so that we can continue to have this big product be on a continuous improvement cycle. Next question is Marianne Frederick. I am going to unmute you now. Go ahead.
All right, this is John Frederick. I'm here with Marianne. My question was, as we go along and see things that are happening, I take notes on my smartphone and save them, and then is there a way that we can text them to somebody as we see things happening?
You mean when you're reviewing the material?
No, during the class itself, when things come up and students have questions on, or there are typos or something like that, can we just put that in a note and then text it or email it to someone?
Yes, you can make note of those and email them directly to me, to Michelle.
Okay. Because I've been texting them to some of them to Danny in the past, but I was waiting to make any changes until the new book came out. And I'm just learning. This is our first time on one of your webinars, so we're just learning how to do the communication. But on a question that was brought up earlier by Wayne Jones on the impedance versus resistance, impedance for this course, for all practical purposes, is the same as resistance. The only time it changes, the impedance is used when you're talking about AC, and when you're talking about speakers, it's audio. So that's why I believe the term impedance is used. But for the purposes of level 1, the only time impedance is dramatically different from resistance is when you get into higher frequencies. I just want to point that out.
Thank you. Roy, you're next. Oh, can we hear you, Roy?
Hello. Hello?
Hi, go ahead.
Okay, back to the first 8 slides. I think that we have to have a disclaimer at the beginning that this is not going to make someone a qualified first responder or EMT, a paramedic, or whatever you want to call it. Could lead back to some liability for ESA if somebody gets questioned in courtroom, well, how'd you learn this? Oh, I took a course from ESA, and they do it wrong.
Good point. I will add that as a note. Thank you, Roy. Next, Jean, I don't know why your hand, it shows now it's raised for 11 minutes. So I don't know if it keeps going up and down on yours. So I'm going to unmute you and just make sure you don't have a question.
If it's up for 11 minutes, his arm's tired.
Well, first of all, I have to apologize. I had to deal with UPS here a moment, and I must have missed it. But I just want to know, for my own benefit, how much change occurred in the communications module. Did you guys talk about that? Did I miss it? Or, again, my intent is not to have you repeat it. I just, there were things in there that, that I had to go out and do a good bit of studying on my own just to deal with questions that came up, and the 7-layer stack and things like that. I mean, just curious as to how much that module changed.
It changed a lot. Whether we gathered all the information that's pertinent today or not, Gene, we're not sure because it keeps changing. Mm-hmm. So that's one of the things as you go through, when you're looking at that and saying, oh, I have to go research that, send us a note and let us know, because if you're having to research it, that means there's probably a few others that are having to research it too, and we need to take a look at that and say, okay, what do we need to change and add so that we don't have to go out and research what should be there individually.
All right, makes sense. I'll look to get the manual then, and wait till I see the manual, and that'll be great.
Okay. Also, just so you know, it's the very last form in the book, the very last page, is the user update and correction form. So you can make copies of that. And what would really be great, Michelle, is if we were able to take that last page and make it into a fill-inable PDF to also put in what we're sending to the instructors. So they don't have to print and handwrite it. They could just input it and then save it and email it.
Okay, will do. Thanks, George. We have another hand raised with Wayne Jones. And Wayne, I apologize. It's showing, yours just showed up as your hand raised, but it's, when I click on it, it says raised for 18 minutes. So your hand might be sore too. So you are unmuted.
Okay, I haven't been waiting that long, so evidently your times are not showing up correctly. But just a quick question. I think you may have already referred to it, but does the residential part of FAME, did y'all move, does this include any of the moving of that out of FAME course? And if so, is FAME being changed?
So I can somewhat respond. Go ahead, George, if you want.
Yeah, we did not specifically look at FAME or PFAD to pull things in to this course. We may be covering some of the same material, but we didn't specifically look at this to pull things out of FAME. We were looking at this strictly as level 1.
Okay, that was my question. I mean, you guys are still looking at taking residential out of FAME?
Yeah, so that's a separate group that is looking at that. Wayne, it's we have a SME group discussing that. We needed to finish level 1 first before we kind of dive in, but yeah, it's not resolved yet of how we're going to, what we're going to potentially move out of FAME, or you know that. So yeah, that's still to be decided. And that's next on the course development committee's list, is to finalize that discussion.
My question, that's fine.
Michelle, are you going to send a list out to everyone as to who all was on this call? Because I'm sure some of the instructors would like to know who other instructors are in the nation.
I normally don't share that information publicly. It's
okay.
You know, yeah, you know, I can, but I don't know if it's, you know.
Okay. I was just.
What I'd like to do, and this is just information for everybody on the call, and because we have, just so you guys know, we have about 30 people on this call right now, and it's a pretty good group of instructors, like a large group. So that's we're very happy to see that. But just from additional information, from the instructor standpoint, we do have an instructor subcommittee now. Ken Nelson is the chair of that subcommittee, and they have been doing a ton of work regarding the instructors and communication and different things coming down the pipeline, that ways that we can assist instructors and also recruit more instructors. So be on the lookout for that information. And then one thing, you know, like I said about having some type of discussion group for the instructors, I think it's very valuable for us to have that for all the courses we have, and in a variety of ways that we can communicate and keep everybody engaged and network together. So be on the lookout for that, because that's something I'm going to put near the top of my list to try and get something set up for that. So, and George, if you don't have anything else, I just want to show them a couple things about the manual and then just kind of wrap it up. Or
go for it, Michelle. I'm done.
Okay, thank you so much, George. Appreciate it so much for you helping us out and stepping up with this. So great job. I'm going to switch over to be the presenter here, and I just want to show you, this is the manual I'm going to pull up and hopefully make sure I am showing you the right screen. George, can you see the table of contents?
Not the whole thing. It's small. It's not full screen mode.
Okay.
But yes, I see that.
So the table of contents, this is the PDF version.
We're only seeing the left 2-3 inches of the table of contents, Michelle. It's not.
Okay, let me figure out how I can get this big. Here, we'll show it on this side.
See a little bit more of it, but still not the whole page. You get,
so
and
many
now we can see the right half of the page, but not the left.
I am, I'll skip that then because I don't want to waste anybody's time. But one thing just to note is the table of contents are just the, and really it's the appendix that just to note.
On mine, Michelle.
Oh, good. Okay, so I'll make you the presenter. You're the presenter now. There we go. So the table of contents, and scroll down to the bottom, George. Yeah. The appendix has a lot of more robust information in it, and we, there is the additional reading information. Just so you guys know, that's where we put all the gray material. So we haven't deleted, and removed this lots of this content. We have actually just put it in the appendix, so that way, as students are following you, if they wanted to, they could go to the additional material in the back or for future reference. Also, still in the back of the book for the Appendix B is the formulas and forms and other aids that we've had, the industry acronym glossary, and then also the security industry dictionary. So those have went through some updates in the past year and a half. So that is all up to date. And then the user update correction form that's in there as well. So I'll get that converted to a PDF and send it out as well. Some questions that have come up since we've been just wrapping up is, can we get a hard copy of the manual? You can. We can get that sent to you. I want those requested. I don't want to send out. It's quite expensive, as you can imagine, for us to send out 100 manuals and ship them across the country. So I want to maintain that to on as requested basis. So please send me those requests if you would like a hard copy of the manual. Woody had asked, are we going to review the exam questions? Not at this time, we are not. It is something that I'm going to talk with the SME group about distributing those exam questions. And just a heads up about this is that we have to be real careful about our exam questions, and we have some state regulators questioning instructors' access to the exams. And I can get into the long and short of this, but we're running out of time here, but there's just some state regulators are questioning, have an instructor teaching to the exam or knowing a lot about the exam and then helping the students in that way. And it's, it's coming from some NISET folks where NISET is a certification exam and they have nothing to do with the training. And we're trying to get some of our certifications approved as a NISET equivalent in various states. So this question is being raised because that is a difference we have. So just heads up that I want to talk more to the Education Committee and to the SME group about our distribution of the exam and the exam questions and make sure that everybody's comfortable with that. As you know, we are moving to computer-based testing. We're trying to implement more test banks. We're enhancing that function. So nonetheless, the SME group, specific individuals did review the exam and make several exam questions and ensure that they were all in the book and in the slides. So there has been a vetting process and an update of that being done. So, and that pretty much wraps it up. So just be on the lookout for email from me. Actually, it'll come from Tracy Dalrymple with the links to the manual and to the slide deck. So there are some things I'm going to get fixed here this morning, so that way you'll have them in that latest version that gets put up there. And like I mentioned earlier, if you see anything glaring, please let us know, and we'll get it fixed. If not, we're going to put it in the next revision process.
I'll add, just guys, when you get that slide deck, go ahead and open up the level 1 start here and make sure that your links are there. I talked with Dan Cantrell. When Dan downloaded his, the links were there. When I downloaded mine yesterday, the day before, the links weren't there, and I had to go in and re-put in the hyperlinks. So just check that and make sure that your hyperlinks are there before you actually try and do it in a class.
And if you don't know how to do those links, definitely let me know, because it's quite easy, but they do get lost sometimes, depending on the versions of PowerPoints that people are using. So, but they're really easy to relink on that main navigation slide deck. So that's it. Thanks again for your time. I will, additionally, I know that a lot of people are saying that other people couldn't make it, so this will be put up. I've recorded this session. It will be put up on our LMS, and I'm going to send everybody the link and the information of how to access this in case you want to go back and review something or talk about something. So thank you all for your time. Thank you to George. And any other feedback, just let me know. Hopefully you all have my email. Thank you, everybody.